Andy says, what has been announced today that will stimulate growth? You see, that's a great question, Peter Cardwell. Shall I start that sentence again?
Maybe.
What was announced today that will stimulate growth? Rachel Reeves stood at the dispatch box and said a lot of stuff, said a lot of things. What was in there that if you were an objective onlooker, I don't know, sitting in that, the gallery that's sort of, there's the public gallery, there's the press gallery, and there's that gallery that goes alongside where a few dignitaries every now and again sit and watch. Funny you see in there from time to time, isn't it?
Certainly, yes.
All sorts of...
Some slabs and
all sorts of
random people.
But if some, and often, it might be a minister from another country sitting in that little area. If you were looking down, what would you extrapolate from that spring statement and say, look, she's got a great idea for growth?
Well, they think it's going to be house building. They think it's going to be cutting the civil service and putting that money into other government services. Obviously, you create a lot of redundancies within that, and a lot of people do work for the state. It's also interesting, I mean, today could be an academic exercise because the Office of Budgetary Responsibility buried in the fine print of their analysis of all of this and where we are as a country economically. They say, if Trump imposes the tariffs, let me just read this little sentence here. If a global trade disputes escalate to include 20 percentage point rises in tariffs between the USA and the rest of the world, this could reduce UK GDP, what the country makes, UK GDP, by a peak of 1% and reduce the current surplus in the target year to almost zero. So everything that's been announced today, all the savings, all the moving around of the money, all the apparently stimulating of growth that Rachel Reeves thinks is going to happen, and in fairness there is some evidence to suggest that there will be some growth, although not as much as she wants. Well, actually that could all disappear if we get involved in a trade war in America, and that's been confirmed. I mean, it's probably straightforward, but the numbers have been crunched by the Office of Budgetary Responsibility.
Wow. So it could all be wiped out just in one statement from Donald Trump.
And we'll see where that goes. There's also been some reaction, Ian, from just a few of the different think tanks and different people, commentators,
tell us more, Peter.
And so on. So the Taxpayers Alliance, for example, always one worth listening to, who says their chief executive, John O'Connell, says the excruciating sight of a chancellor facing the consequences of her own actions will not provide any schadenfreude for businesses facing surging tax bills, job seekers seeking opportunities evaporate, and farmers fearing for their livelihoods. And one more, which I always find worth listening to, is the Adam Smith Institute, and Maxwell Marlowe, who's sometimes a guest on this channel as well. He says, we're glad to see government understands building more in this country boosts economic growth. Whilst the housing targets are too low in our cities and suburbs, the liberalisation of the planning framework should be enthusiastically welcomed, he says.
Indeed. And he's coming on with us in about 10 minutes' time.
Okay, well, he'll presumably repeat
that. Great little warm-up there for him. Let's have a listen to some of what the Chancellor had to say then. A few little clips from that. Not a budget, it's a spring statement, everybody. Let's start then with Rachel Reeves talking planning reforms.
Policies to grow our economy. Promises by a Labour government, delivered by a Labour government, opposed by the parties opposite. Mr. Speaker, the planning system that we inherited was far too slow. The OBR have concluded that our reforms will lead to house building reaching a 40-year high. 305,000 homes a year by the end of the forecast period. And changes to the National Planning Policy Framework alone will help build over 1.3 million homes in the UK over the next 5 years.
Well, there she is. That's the statement that we were referring to earlier. 305,000. I said 300,000, so it's even more, according to Rachel. By 305,000 by the end of the forecast period, but that is the end of this Parliament, right?
Yes.
So, and we're now.
Well, so 305 by the end of the financial year. I think. So
this year.
So we've got, well, the next financial year that she's talking about, which starts on the 6th of April. But yes, by the end of the Parliament, they want 1.5 million homes.
So 300,000 by the end of not this April coming.
Following April.
The following April.
Yeah, but also we'll get the statistics fairly soon, the next few months, of how many homes have been built this year, and certainly since July the 4th as well. And I think they're going to be behind even.
Well, I think there's probably about 33 has been built since July the 4th. So, I mean, I would suggest, I'm not a constructor, I'm not Mr. Wimpy, but I would imagine that they're probably short on the target.
I think they probably are.
Let's have a listen to the Chancellor speaking on welfare.
We are investing £1 billion to provide guaranteed, personalised employment support to help people back into work. And £400 million to support the Department for Work and Pensions and our job centres to deliver these changes effectively and fairly, taking total savings after that to the package to £3.4 billion. While spending on disability and sickness benefits will continue to rise, these plans mean that welfare spending as a share of GDP will fall between 2026 and the end of the forecast period. Very different to what we inherited from the party opposite.
So who loses?
People in universal credit, essentially. They're freezing elements of that. They're freezing the health element of that. I think it's going to be harder to get on things like the personal independence payment. It'll be very interesting to see how the numbers of this, because really what they're doing is reducing the benefit, but also are they going to get the numbers down? Are they going to get many of those people who can work back into work? There are many people will say there are lots of barriers to work, and also the economy. If you've got an economy under pressure, yes, there will be some growth, but employers, if they're taking people on from the 1st of April, from next Tuesday, will cost on average another £2,000 per employee. So are people going to, that's a big risk for many people. Are they going to take the risk of employing someone who is perhaps, through usually no fault of their own, going to have a patchy attendance record because of some form of disability? That's a big question for many employers. I don't want to castigate disabled people or say that they're in some way less valuable to our society than other people. Of course they're not. Many disabled people want to work. You know, my best friend is MS, for example. She wants to work as much as possible. And I think, but it is a big question for employers to say, is this something I can accommodate? Is this someone I can accommodate? Can we change the way work works? And also, with the benefits bill, is that possible to get down?
Yeah. We're going to be speaking to a girl called Hannah Hunt a little later in the programme. She's from One campaign group. Yesterday she interrupted Wes Streeting when he was giving a statement on this. She feels very strongly about where those welfare cuts could land and who it could affect. And obviously Labour will say, look, we're looking after the most vulnerable, because everybody does that. But, given their track record on the most vulnerable pensioners, you do sort of wonder.
Well, certainly, and I think there are a lot of people who say, is Labour actually on their side? I think the farmers are asking that, I think pensioners are asking that, and really, if you look at, there are a lot of people in this country who receive some form of benefit, whether that's an out-of-work benefit or not, and if that goes down, and if that's cut by Labour, are they going to vote for them again in 2029? Yep. It's not just working people, it's not just people who pay taxes, who pay income tax. I mean, most people pay some form of tax, whether it's VAT or whatever, but it's people. It's everybody in our society. Again, coming back to that fundamental question in 2029, do you feel better or worse under Labour?
It's as simple as that. Peter, thank you. Peter Cardwell with us on the programme. We will speak to Henry Murison in just a moment, CEO of the Northern Powerhouse, to get his take on this. And Maxwell Marlowe, the economist, is on with us as well. We're also live in College Green. Richard Tice from Reform UK will be on the programme too. Crucially, over to you. I do want to throw up that question. I mean, firstly, obviously, your reaction to the Springs Day, if you were listening to it and not, frankly, eating or gnawing your own elbows through boredom, then happy to take your assessment of how you think our Chancellor did. But I think the wider question, which this has thrown up, is how do we get this country back on its feet? What do we fundamentally need to do with our financial spanners? How can we get things and those cogwheels turning again?